I'm Kelsey. This is my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I'm wearing one of my fancy booktube hats, and today I'm bringing you a video where I'm going to do my book haul of things that I got from BookExpo and BookCon this year and talk to you a little bit about my experience with BookExpo and BookCon and what I was doing there. My experiences with BookExpo and BookCon have been, I think, a little different from a bunch of other booktubers because, one, I live in New York City and I don't think it's something I would travel here for, but two, I volunteer with the Housing Works Bookstore, which is the charity partner of BookExpo and BookCon, and so I was actually volunteering with Housing Works at the event. So I was working the event for several shifts, and then I got to enjoy the festivities of the event when I wasn't on my volunteer shift. This is the second year I've volunteered at BookExpo and BookCon with Housing Works, so I sort of had a better understanding this time than last time of how everything was going to work. So Housing Works is a nonprofit organization in New York City that provides services to people who are struggling with HIV/AIDS and homelessness in New York City. And funding for what Housing Works does comes in part from our thrift stores throughout the city and our bookstore, which is where I volunteer. The bookstore is in Soho. It is mostly a used bookstore. Basically, everything we sell in the store is donated. So many of those donations are used book donations from people who walk in with boxes and bags of books, but a bunch of those donations are also new book donations that come from publishers. And BookExpo and BookCon are very important for us in terms of the donations that we get, because what we do as volunteers is we go booth to booth talking to the different exhibitors and asking if they think they're going to have extra books left over at the end of the show, if they'd consider donating them to us instead of hauling them back to wherever they're coming from. The Housing Works bookstore has wonderful relationships with a lot of publishers, and we do get a lot of new book donations from BookExpo and BookCon. I think it's our single largest annual source of new book donations that we get. So then, aside from what we do soliciting donations from publishers at the event, Housing Works also has a booth. This year it was like in the back near the downtown stage on one side and like the autographing area on the other side. If you were there and you can sort of place in your mind where that was, that's where we were. And at our booth we were also selling merchandise and some blind date books, which sold out relatively quickly once BookCon started. So for me, I had two different types of volunteer shifts that I worked during the event. One was shifts during the day, either manning the booth or going to talk to other exhibitors. And then the other sort of more important shift is at the end of the day, packing up. We did a bunch of packing up both at the end of BookExpo when some of the exhibitors pack up and leave, and then again at the end of BookCon for everything else. So this year I volunteered both packing up shifts because that's really when a lot of hands on deck makes a lot of difference in terms of getting the job done. But then I also volunteered 2 shifts during the day. I did the morning BookExpo started on, I think it was Wednesday, and then also the morning BookCon started on Saturday. So then in terms of just attending the event as myself, that was the schedule that I was working around. So there were things that like I would have liked to do and, you know, books I would have liked to get or whatever that were happening during my volunteer shifts, and that's okay. I don't really stress it. I don't really care. It's something where I'm really just grateful for the opportunity to be there. That said, I did acquire a stack of books, all of which are things I am pretty excited about. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these books sort of chronologically in the order that I got them, and as I go I'll be able to talk a little bit about each day of BookExpo and BookCon if there were other things that happened on that day that I want to tell you about. But first, I'm going to show you the one thing that I got that I was very, very excited about that wasn't a book. It was a pin. It's on a jacket of mine where it lives now. But this, if you recognize it, is a Wondrous Society membership pin from the Nevermore books by Jessica Townsend. Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow, and Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow. I've enjoyed those books immensely, so it was, it gave me great joy to have my little pin to wear on my lapel. But on to the books. On Wednesday, after my volunteer shift got out at like 2 o'clock or something like that, I don't remember when, there was one ARC drop that happened in the last few hours of the day that was a book I knew I was curious about and I wanted to see if I could get it, and I did. But while I was sort of wandering around waiting for that to happen, I ended up picking up 2 more things. One of them was a signing for a finished copy. This is the only finished copy that I got during the event of this book, which is Nocturna by Maya Montaye. This is a young adult fantasy novel that I know that Jocelyn from Yogi with a Book has read and liked. So on that recommendation, when I saw there was a signing going on, I jumped in the line. What I know about this book is that it has Latinx-inspired fantasy world building and a gorgeous cover. And then the next thing I got was something where if I had known they were giving away ARCs for this, I would have been like planning on it 100% because I'm very hotly anticipating this book. I don't know if it was even announced anywhere that they were giving these away, but as I was walking past the Oni Press booth, which is a kids and YA graphic novel publisher, they were just sort of quietly setting out stacks of ARCs for several different upcoming titles, including The Tea Dragon Festival by Katie O'Neill, which I cannot say I have ever been quite so excited about a forthcoming graphic novel before. This is a standalone prequel to The Tea Dragon Society, which I absolutely adored. And the release date for this is September 17th. And then the third book that I got on Wednesday was the one that I knew about in advance. This is called The Dark Lord Clementine by Sarah Jean Horwitz, who is the same author who wrote the Carmer and Grit series of middle grade novels. This is also a middle grade release, and I've read the first book in that series, which was her debut novel. I've got a review for that on my channel, which I can link for you so you can check that out. But this one just looks absolutely charming. It's about a girl named Clementine who is the heir to a Dark Lordship. Her father is the Dark Lord, but for some reason he becomes unable to fulfill his responsibilities, in which case the Council of Evil Overlords, according to the back, informs Clementine that she must take up the duties of being the Dark Lord. I'm getting really strong, like, Castle Hangnail vibes from the description of this book, if you're familiar with Castle Hangnail by Ursula Vernon, with the sort of like administrative rules and regulations over like being a Dark Lord or an evil witch or something. So if this is anything like that, I will probably enjoy it. This is an October release, October 1st from Algonquin Young Readers. On Thursday, I got to be there for the whole day. I was not volunteering on Thursday, but I did prioritize socializing a bit above book getting. My aforementioned booktube friend Jocelyn from Yogi with a Book was also there on just the Thursday of BookExpo and the Sunday of BookCon, so I made sure that I caught up with her a bit, and she introduced me to some other people whom she knew, and I tried to socialize. I was not as good at the socializing as I might have hoped to be, but I tried. Anyways, I did make it to 2 ARC signings on Thursday. The first was War Girls by Tochi Onyebuchi, who is the author of the Beasts Made of Night series. I think that's a fantasy duology, but this is sci-fi, and it's the start of a new series. It's set in Nigeria in the year 2172, and I believe it's about 2 sisters and a war that they're involved in. This is due to be published in October from Razorbill. I I don't see a specific date anywhere on here, just October. And then the second book that I got on Thursday was also a signing, and that was Race to the Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is her new middle grade book that's going to be coming out from the Rick Riordan Presents line. Like her adult Sixth World series, which starts with Trail of Lightning, I believe this is based on Navajo mythology, and I think the publication date for this has actually been pushed back since it was first announced. It says on the spine that it's an October release, but they were also giving out these nifty little fans with some of the cover art on it, which I probably won't keep because I actually don't have much of a use for this, but it is handy because it has an updated publication date on it. I believe the date this has been pushed back to is this date, January 14th, 2020. So January 2020 from Disney Hyperion and Rick Riordan Presents. So at this point you may notice the sort of obvious glaring thing here, which is that I had, at this point, managed to acquire this stack of books, all of which were either YA or middle grade. And that is fine. I like YA, I like middle grade. There is nothing wrong with this for me. But I did want to sort of balance it out a bit with some adult books. So on Friday, I had until my evening packing shift started, and I told myself, you know what, I think I'm actually going to try to plan this, and I think I'm going to try to see if I can get my hands on some adult SFF titles. That was my challenge for myself for the day. And I ended up with 3. So part of the reason I think I hadn't stumbled across adult SFF in the previous 2 days was that one of the main publishers that was doing ARC drops and signings for adult SFF titles at BookExpo was Macmillan with Tor and Tor.com. But this year they were having all of their in-booth signings during BookExpo be ticketed. And they were giving out those tickets like on a first-come, first-served basis at the beginning of the day when the show opened. So because I hadn't really planned in advance for the first 2 days, I didn't plan that into my schedule and no Macmillan books for me. On day 3, I had my act together and I got my 2 allotted Macmillan tickets for the day in the morning for the 2 signings for upcoming Tor.com publishing releases that they were doing that day. The first was a second book by Tochi Onyebuchi, who recognized me at the second signing from the first signing, which was lovely and slightly embarrassing. But this is, I believe, going to be his first adult book. It's a novella called Riot Baby. And while I think all of his YA books have been either based on or set in Western Africa, this deals with African American issues and is set in a dystopian United States. And this one is another January 2020 release. So then in between the first Tor.com signing that I had a ticket to and the second one, I went to one more ARC drop that was at the Hachette booth. Now, interestingly, my information I had on this ARC drop was incorrect. I had thought it was going to be one book. It ended up being a different one, but I was not at all displeased about this because it turns out that the book this was one I was even more interested than the book I thought it was going to be. Because this is The 10,000 Doors of January by Alix E. Harrow, which is one of my absolute most anticipated books of the second half of the year right now. Now, this is Alix E. Harrow's debut novel, but I have read a couple of her short stories before that I have really enjoyed, so I know I like her writing style. And even if I didn't already know that I liked the author's writing, this would be something that would appeal to me immensely, because even though I don't know a ton about the story of this, I know it is a historical portal fantasy, and it just has this cover that screams Kelsey, this is your type of book at me, and when covers scream that at me, I do pay attention. The publication date on this is September 10th from Red Hook, and I cannot express to you how delighted I am that I did in fact end up with a copy of this book, given that I thought I missed my only opportunities at it the previous day by being stuck in other long lines. And then my last book that I got on Friday was that second in-booth signing of the day from Tor.com. And this is one that everyone is so hyped about. It's one of those books that I don't think I would have sought out or been interested in, except that the hype bug has bit me. And I've heard so many good things about this that now I am somehow as excited as everyone else about Gideon the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir. So, lesbian necromancers in space, lots of skeletons, is sort of the description of this book that's going around. For me, necromancy is a buzzword that doesn't really get me. I'm not super into skeletons, but if this is as unique as it seems like it's going to be and as fun as people keep saying that it is, I think I still want to read it. From what I've seen of the writing style, it looks very unique, and it also looks like a really unique space fantasy world concept. So yes, I am a little scared to read this book, but you bet I'm still going to do it. And this is another September 2019 release from Tor.com Publishing, but full-length novel, not novella. Definitely full-length novel. Also the first in a series. I don't know how many books this is going to be, though. So then BookCon happened. If you'll remember from my video last year I was very overwhelmed by the massive thronging crowds of BookCon, especially after BookExpo, which is a relatively common professional experience. And I really don't want to be hoity-toity about it. I know that I'm very privileged to get to go to BookExpo as someone who is sort of only tangentially, a publishing industry insider as a Housing Works volunteer working the volunteer shifts at the event. But BookCon still does feel like this sort of mass hysteria in comparison. I think for a lot of people who attend BookCon, it is their only chance to get advance copies of books at all. So they are very, very excited about the possibility. And there are, I think, fewer ARC drops that happen. At least this year, it looked to me like there were way fewer ARC drops during the schedule of a day at BookCon than BookExpo. So I looked at those lines that people were in for ARC drops and how long before the ARC drop happened those lines got full and were capped by people, running the event. And my opinion sort of was, generally, this is not worth it. At one point, I kid you not, I was walking past a line that was wrapping around a booth. And I could have sworn I heard someone say, "This is the line to sign up for the newsletter." And I was like, what? You have got to be, that cannot possibly be correct. Maybe you got a tote bag or something. If you signed up for the newsletter, it looked like there were tote bags, but holy moly, I don't need to do this. So on Saturday of BookExpo, I had a volunteer shift earlier in the day, but I was feeling sort of unwell that morning, and so after my volunteer shift was over, I just went home. I didn't do any BookConning on Saturday. Sunday, however, I came back and I sort of figured out my priorities, and I figured that my priorities were not going to be getting stuff. My priorities were going to be going to panels. Last year, I went to a couple of really good, interesting author panels that were during BookExpo as opposed to BookCon, and it looked like this year there weren't as many panels during BookExpo, but there were more panels that I was really interested in during BookCon, especially on Sunday. That said, I did make the effort in the morning to get a ticket for one ticketed ARC drop that was happening, that was something that I was personally very excited about, that I figured that maybe the very YA-oriented crowds at BookCon might not be as pumped for as I was, so I thought that the competition to get one of these tickets might not be quite so strong. And I think I did make that calculation correctly. I didn't have any problem getting a ticket for this signing, and it was something that I was very happy about. This is A Song for a New Day by Sarah Pinsker. This is an adult sci-fi, sort of dystopian-ish seeming novel that focuses on music and musicians in a world where concert performances have been outlawed. Again, this is a debut novel from an author whose short fiction I have really liked before. Sarah Pinsker had 2 stories nominated for the Hugos last year. Wind Will Rove in Novelette, which was also a sci-fi story about music, and then there were N-1 in Novella. I really liked both of those. If you may recall all the way back to my beginning of the year and my anticipated releases video, I had a different Sarah Pinsker book on my anticipated releases for the year list. I was not unaware that this one was happening, but I picked one, and the one that I picked for that list was her short story collection, which was recently released. Sooner or later, Everything Falls into the Sea. So if you're curious, yes, I have also acquired a copy of that book. I bought it this month. You'll see it in an upcoming book haul. But this was a really fun signing to go to because before the signing started, Sarah Pinsker actually did a little mini concert for us. She played a couple of songs for us, like right there in the Penguin Random House booth, which was a lot of fun. The acoustics were a little strange, but it was a lot of fun. This is coming out September 10th from Berkeley, and this also came with a small bit of swag. This is a little necklace chain with, I think this is like supposed to be a guitar pick with some of the cover art and book title on it. So yay, swag! And this was the only book that I got during BookCon. Mostly I just let all the craziness at BookCon roll off of my back like a duck. I did go to panels though on Sunday, 3 of them. I was a little late after the signing to the one sort of book internet panel that I went to, which was the future of the online book community, which was the panel that Christina Marie moderated. I believe the footage from that is online, so I will link it if I can find it. So I got to that one a little late, but I still saw most of the panel, and I got to try again awkwardly to do some socializing with BookTube people after that. And then the 2 author panels that I went to during the day were one with N.K. Jemisin and Rebecca Roanhorse talking about their speculative fiction work, and then another sci-fi fantasy panel that was comprised of a lot of Tor and Tor.com authors talking about their work. I did not go to the actual BookTube panel, which was at the same time as the Tor Presents panel, and I made a decision based on the fact that I didn't feel like I really needed to hear like really big booktubers talk about their experience on BookTube, given that I don't feel like that's necessarily relevant to my experience as a small content creator. And I was worried that going to that panel might like make me feel bad about myself being a small content creator, and I didn't want to put myself through that. And then I know there was also drama surrounding another BookTube meetup thing that happened after that panel. I didn't go to that either. I cannot speak to any of the drama. I was already packing boxes for Housing Works at 4 o'clock when that happened. It was a lot of work. We were there until like 9 p.m. It is crazy being there for the packing up and like loading out of an event like BookCon, because you're like running around trying to pack up all these boxes of book donations at the different different booths as like they're literally rolling up the carpet under you and like taking down all the signs with giant cherry pickers, and you have to try to not get run over by the forklifts. It's an experience. There was a lot of heavy lifting. I was very sore the next day, but it was worth it. Anyhow, let me know if you were at BookExpo or BookCon this year, what you think of the event, the experience. Let me know what you think of any of these books, if these are also things you're excited about. I think I counted from my video last year, I think I had 8 books in my BookExpo haul last year, having not done BookCon at all. And I also think that I got 8 books at BookExpo this year, but this is a stack of 9 because of the one more that came from BookCon. So I think I'm pretty consistent year to year at this point in terms of my level of book acquiring. I know there are people who go to events like this and are more selective than I am in terms of picking up only very specific things. I know there are lots of people though who go and like just fill up bags of whatever books they can get their hands on, which I could not do that. I would not want to do that. But let me know what you think. I hope you're having a nice day. That is all. Bye for now.